Welcome, my dear listener. Take a slow, steady breath and let the air drift gently in, and then out again. Feel your body soften into the space around you, your shoulders loosening, your hands resting, your eyes growing heavy. Tonight, I invite you to drift with me into a story. A story spun not in rush or urgency, but in stillness and quiet. A story where love doesn't arrive with noise, but with a whisper, where connection comes not in grand gestures, but in gentle turns, like a carousel circling slowly beneath. The moon, settle yourself and let the rhythm of this tale cradle you. For in the small town square, beneath the hush of twilight lamps, an old carousel waits, and within its silence, a song is about to return. Every evening, Clara walked home, along the cobbled streets of the little town. The air was often soft with dusk, the lamps glowing golden, their light pooling across the stones like warm tea poured into a shallow cup. And each time she passed the town square, her steps slowed. In the center of the square stood the old carousel. Its paint had long since faded, the once bright colors now dulled into soft shades of cream and pale rose. The wooden horses were still, their manes frozen mid-gallop, their eyes wide and glassy with years of waiting. The carousel had not turned in decades. No music rose from it, no laughter of children, only silence. And yet, whenever Clara looked at it, something stirred inside her, a quiet familiarity, like hearing a lullaby half remembered from childhood. She could not say when she first noticed the feeling. Perhaps she had always carried it. The carousel felt like a memory she could not place. She often lingered there, her hand resting on the iron railing that circled the ride. The cool metal would press lightly against her palm as she stood, gazing at the still horses. She would imagine them in motion, the air filled with music, soft notes curling like ribbons into the square. Sometimes she thought she could almost hear it, a gentle melody, faint as if drifting from very far away. But when she blinked, there was nothing, only silence, only the weight of the evening air and her own heart beating slowly within her chest. Clara never told anyone about these feelings. They were too quiet, too delicate to explain. It was easier to let them remain hers alone, a small secret between her and the carousel. So each night, after her work at the library was done, she would walk the same path, pause in the square, and let her eyes wander over the weathered wood and painted lights. There was a kind of melancholy in it, but it was gentle, like the soft sadness of a song played in the background of a dream. The carousel was silent, but in her heart it was alive. And so she carried on, evening after evening, her steps leading her past the same place, her gaze finding the same still ride, not knowing why it pulled her so, or why the quiet hum of memory followed her home each night, only that it did, and that it always would. One evening, the air in the square felt different. The sky had slipped into a soft indigo, stars blinking gently awake. A hush settled over the streets, as if the whole town were holding its breath. Clara arrived as she always did, her steps quiet on the cobblestones. She expected stillness, the usual silence of the old ride waiting in the dark. But as she drew closer, she noticed something she had never seen before. A faint glow traced along the edges of the carousel's canopy. Not bright, not sudden, only a dim shimmer, like the first light of dawn hidden behind curtains. Clara's breath caught softly in her chest. She thought perhaps it was a trick of the lamps nearby, their light bending across the square. But then she heard it, a note, just one. Low, trembling, and impossibly familiar. It lingered in the air like the ring of a bell long after it was struck. Then came another, and another. A melody was forming, soft, slow, uncertain at first, as though the carousel itself was remembering how to sing, and with the music came movement. The horses, still and waiting for so many years, shifted. One leaned forward ever so slightly, another tilted back as if breathing. The platform beneath them began to stir, creaking gently as it turned. Not fast, not loud, but steady and real. Clara stood frozen at the railing, her heart thudding like a soft drum. She recognized the tune. Her lips parted, though no words came. It was the lullaby she used to hum as a child. Not to anyone, not for anyone, just to herself, in the quiet before sleep. She had never heard it played anywhere else, never told anyone about it, and yet here it was, spilling from the carousel as if the wood and paint had been keeping it safe all these years. She closed her eyes, letting the sound wash over her. It was gentle, like a hand smoothing a wrinkle. In fabric, each note rose and fell with patience, never rushing, never pressing forward. It circled her, just as the carousel circled slowly in the square. Her chest grew warm and her throat tightened with something she could not name. It was not sorrow, not joy, but something in between, something that reminded her of being held, though no one was holding her. The town square was empty, but she did not feel alone. The music filled the space, wrapping around her like a soft shawl against the evening breeze. She stayed until the last note faded, until the carousel's glow dimmed once more, until the horses stilled. When the silence returned, it was deeper than before, as though it had been touched by the music too. Clara placed her hand gently on the railing, whispering without meaning to, "I remember." And though the square was empty, though no one else was there to hear her, the words felt answered by the hush, by the carousel, by something unseen but listening. The nights that followed felt different. Clara found herself drawn more quickly to the square, as though her feet were following the echo of a melody no one else could hear. She longed for it again, that quiet music, that glow, that gentle turning. And one evening the carousel was alive once more. Its soft notes rose into the night air, circling like fireflies, weaving into the shadows of the lamps. Clara stepped closer, her breath steady, her pulse unhurried but deep. But this time she wasn't alone. On the far side of the carousel, half hidden in the gentle lamplight, a man stood. He was leaning slightly against the wooden frame, his hand resting on the carved pole of one of the horses. He was not watching her, not at first, but listening. His head tilted slightly, his eyes closed, as though the song was not just in the air, but inside him. Clara hesitated, her hand still resting on the railing. For a moment she thought she might leave quietly, but then, as though sensing her presence, the man opened his eyes. They were soft eyes, gentle, steady, the kind that did not surprise or startle. He looked at her as though he had expected her, as though she belonged to this moment as much as he did. "You hear it too?" he said quietly. His voice was low, like dusk settling over the square. Clara swallowed softly, unsure what to say. "Yes," she whispered at last. I I know this song." The man gave the faintest of smiles, as if her words were not surprising, but confirming. "I've been repairing the carousel," he murmured, his hand brushing lightly along the horse's painted mane. It was broken, silent for years. But last month I dreamed of a melody, a lullaby. I knew I had to bring it back. Clara's breath caught in her throat. She stepped closer, the glow of the carousel painting her features in pale gold. "What kind of melody?" she asked. He looked at her fully now, his gaze steady but gentle, as if placing something fragile into her hands. "The same one you just heard." Clara felt her lips part, but no words came. Instead, silence stretched between them, not empty, but full. Full of something neither could name, yet both could feel. The carousel turned slowly. the horses circling them in patient rhythm. The notes drifted softly into the square, filling the space between their heartbeats, and in that quiet, Clara realized she had never felt less alone. The man's hands slipped from the horse's pole, resting lightly at his side. He did not step forward, did not intrude, he only stood, his presence calm, as though waiting for her to decide if the silence should break. Clara let her gaze lower, tracing the patterns of shadow and light across the cobblestones. Her lips curved softly, just barely, and when she lifted her eyes again, he was still watching her, not with question, not with urgency, but with the patience of someone who already understood. The music circled, the carousel turned, and between them, something gentle began to stir like the first threads of a song remembered together. The nights became a rhythm of their own. Clara found herself returning again and again, and each time the man was there, sometimes adjusting a lantern at the edge of the platform, sometimes brushing a cloth over the carved wooden horses, sometimes simply listening, his eyes closed as the melody circled softly in the air. Clara never asked his name at first. It felt unnecessary, almost too heavy for the quiet they shared. Instead, she listened with him. They stood on opposite sides of the carousel, sometimes close, sometimes apart, always joined by the music. And one evening, as the stars shimmered in their high, patient places, Clara finally spoke, this lullaby. She began softly, her voice like the hush of leaves in a breeze. It isn't just a melody I used to hum. It feels as though it belongs to me, as though it was written in my own breath. The man lifted his gaze from the carousel horse he had been polishing. His eyes, warm and steady, held hers with a gentleness that did not waver. It was, he whispered. Clara's chest rose in a quiet breath, her heart pausing, listening. She tilted her head slightly, waiting. I dreamed it, he continued, his words unhurried, falling like water over stone. Years ago, long before I found this carousel, in my dream there was someone humming, softly, in the dark, a lullaby for no one but themselves. I woke with the tune still in my chest, and it never left me. He let the silence linger, the notes of the carousel filling the spaces between his words. I didn't know who it belonged to, only that it was not mine. Clara's throat tightened, though not with sorrow. Her eyes lowered, her lashes trembling against her cheeks. Her fingers pressed lightly into the railing, as though steadying herself against the tide of something both fragile and vast. It was mine, she whispered. Her voice was quiet, yet it seemed to echo in the square, as though the carousel itself had heard and agreed. The man's expression softened further, not surprise, not disbelief, but recognition, as though he had been waiting for her to claim it, as though the years of silence had been leading here. The song found its way back, he said, almost to himself, back to the one who sang it first. Clara lifted her gaze to his, and for the first time, she felt no distance between them, not across the square, not across the silence, not across the quiet years that had passed. The music circled them, steady, tender, like a memory repeating itself with new clarity. And as she stood beneath the glow of the carousel, Clara realized that the lullaby had never been forgotten. It had been waiting. It had been carried by him, tended to, protected until she was ready to hear it again. Her lips curved into the smallest of smiles, and his did too. No words were needed after that. Only the song, only the turning, only the quiet, steady knowledge of something found. The next evening, the square was bathed in a silver hush. The moon had risen full and round, its light spilling over the cobblestones like milk poured into a still bowl. The lamps glowed softly at the edges, but the center of the square was alive with a different kind of glow, the carousel's gentle shimmer, steady now, as though it had remembered its purpose. Clara arrived as she always did, her steps slow, her shawl brushing lightly against her arms. The man was already there, leaning quietly against one of the wooden horses. When he lifted his head and met her gaze, no words passed between them, only a shared look, warm, steady enough. The music began as if it had been waiting for her. The lullaby rose once more, circling through the night air, its notes slow and soft, like a river humming in the dark. The horses stirred, and the platform began its slow, steady turn. This time, the man reached for the gate and opened it gently. He did not gesture, did not insist, he only stepped aside, leaving space for her to choose. Clara hesitated for the briefest moment, her breath rising, then she stepped forward. The wood creaked beneath her shoes as she crossed the platform. She placed her hand on the smooth neck of one of the horses, its paint faded but still gleaming. Faintly in the moonlight, the man climbed on to the opposite side, his presence steady, unhurried. The carousel turned, round and round, so slowly that the square seemed to expand and soften, as though time itself were circling with them. The music carried them no lyrics, no voices, just the tender hum of something remembered and returned. Clara let her eyes close for a moment. The night air brushed her cheeks, cool and light. The scent of wood and old paint lingered, mingling with the faint sweetness of summer flowers carried in from the edges of town. Her hands rested gently on the railing of her horse, her body swaying slightly with the rhythm. When she opened her eyes, she found him watching her, not intensely, not intrusively, only softly, as though he were listening to the same song. Within her that played through the carousel, their eyes met, and for a long moment they simply remained that way. No speech, no motion beyond the slow circling beneath them, and it was enough. The music seemed to fold around them, carrying them not just through the square but through something larger, memory, longing, presence. The carousel turned as though it had always been meant for two riders, waiting for them both to find it at last. They did not speak. They did not need to. The silence between them was not empty, it was whole. It was peace itself, shared quietly, without demand. As the horses rose and fell with the slow motion, Clara felt her heart mirror the rhythm, not racing, not restless, but steady. The carousel carried them together, round and round beneath the tender light of the moon, and in that quiet circling they both knew they had found home in each other's presence. Not through words, not through grand gestures, but through a lullaby, a turning and the stillness of peace. The night deepened around them. The square grew quieter, the lamps dimming, the shadows lengthening across the cobblestones. The carousel turned and turned, its rhythm steady, as though time itself had grown drowsy and was swaying along. Clara let her eyes half close, her breath moving in slow waves with the music. Each note was softer now, as if the lullaby itself was preparing to rest. Her horse rose gently, then lowered again, the motion so smooth that she felt as though she were floating. Across from her, the man remained still, his gaze softened in the moonlight. Their eyes met again, and this time no smile passed, no gesture, only the simple recognition of presence. It was enough, more than enough. The carousel slowed. The music lingered, a few notes hanging in the air like feathers drifting downward before fading into hush. The horses grew still once more, their wooden hooves settling back onto the platform. The glow of the canopy softened, then dimmed, leaving only the silver light of the moon above. And yet the silence was not empty. It was full of memory, full of the song that had circled them, full of the closeness that did not need sound to exist. Clara exhaled slowly, her shoulders loosening. She felt the weight of the evening settle gently around her, not heavy, but protective like a quilt drawn up in the dark. The man remained by her side, quiet, steady, a figure she knew would not vanish when the music did. For a moment she thought she heard the carousel hum again, faintly, though it had already fallen still. But perhaps it was not the carousel. Perhaps. It was the song now resting inside her chest, and inside his too. They stepped down from the platform together, their movements slow, unhurried. The square stretched wide and silent, the town asleep around them, the night a soft veil overhead. No words were spoken. There was no need. Clara placed her hand briefly on the railing of the carousel as they passed, her fingers brushing against the cool iron one last time. I'll remember, she whispered to the ride, to the melody, to herself, and in the hush that followed, it seemed the night answered, not with sound, but with stillness, with peace. They walked away together. Their steps soft, the quiet between them tender as the fading glow of the carousel. The moon followed, and the stars leaned closer, their light gentle, protective. And in that hush, love lived not loud, not urgent, but steady, like a lullaby that never truly ends. And now, dear listener, let your own breath move slowly, like the turning of the carousel. Let your heart rest in the quiet rhythm of its song. The story has softened to silence, and so may you. You are safe. You are held in stillness. And like Clara, you may carry the melody of peace within you into sleep, into dreams, into the gentlest part of the night. Rest now. The carousel has stopped, but the music lingers inside you. Always. Good night.